Alrighty, so welcome you all to our session on credentialing and privileging. So happy to have you all here with us. I'm going to introduce Mrs. Karen Bernard briefly. She's just an amazing person overall. So I'm already going to say that she's helped me a lot through my process of getting credentialed, and she literally just held my hand the whole time. So she's amazing. But she has more than 12 years of experience in the medical staff service industry, where she's helped hundreds of clinicians navigate credentialing process, both as they join the practice or as they move on to new opportunities. I think that's a very important part. Are you going to have that support if you're going to leave an institution too? So she's worked at Greater Lawrence Family Health Center for the last 18 years, is on the board of Massachusetts Association of Medical Staff Services. She sees the flaws and challenges in the credentialer system as a whole and has tailored her process to minimize the duplicacy and eliminate confusion. She's also very active in her community serving in the Salem area with the Women's Committee there. And she's also a Girl Scout trooper. Shout out to Girl Scout. My mom was a Girl Scout trooper too. She is also a mom to 3 girls, and she loves traveling with her husband. So thank you so much, Karen, for joining us and dedicating your time, volunteering your time to speak with us. I know that this is going to be very helpful for people because there's varying levels of support at different institutions, and people will be able to watch this also in the future as they approach that session. So I'm going to mute myself and you can go ahead and start sharing all your knowledge.
Okay, well, thank you, Ryan, and thank you, everybody, for inviting me to talk with you today about the credentialing and privileging process and how to navigate onboarding. As we go through this presentation, one theme that you may pick up on immediately is that there's a lot of times you're going to be asked for the same information. We seem to encounter a lot of red tape in this process, and it's not necessarily obvious what you need to do or how to do it. And really the truth is that some, excuse me, some of you may be employed by an organization who doesn't necessarily know how to do that either. So that can be a real challenge. Credentialing and privileging is constantly evolving. What's true today will not necessarily be true even 6 months from now. And because of this, I've really made it my mission to develop a process that leads my clinicians, through this as painlessly as possible. Don't get me wrong, it's still a lot of work, but if you're prepared for it and you know what to expect, it really sets the tone for getting through it. And really the framework to all of this begins with good communication. So let me just get started with some of the objectives I hope that you'll pick up today is to understand what the credentialing process is and why it's necessary. Understand the various components to licensure and documentation, grasp the importance of timelines and the part you play in expediting deadlines. And remember that this is an ongoing process and your response time is key. So let's begin. First, I thought it would be really helpful to just have some kind of definitions in our toolbox. What does credentialing and privileging actually mean? So credentialing is the process of assessing and confirming the qualifications of a licensed or certified healthcare practitioner, while privileging is the process of authorizing the specific scope and content of a licensed and certified healthcare practitioner's patient care services. So really, basically what this means is when we're credentialing you, we're looking at who you are. You are who you say you are. You have a license. You've been educated in the medical field. You've graduated from a residency program. We're kind of like PIs. We take a little dive into your background, and we really just want to make sure you are who you say you are. The privileging process is, are you qualified and competent to do the procedures that you want to do with our patients? And so we're really looking into a deep dive there. And of course, we get into other things like red flags, malpractice, sanctions verification. So we're really kind of doing a deeper dive as we look into to this credentialing and privileging process. And I just want to make a note that the insurance companies are also looking at this credentialing process because they want to make sure that you are who you say you are as you bill for the services provided to their patients. And so credentialing and privileging, what does it mean for you? You're taking a step back, and I want you to just think about all of the different places that you're going to be completing paperwork. And Ryan knows because she just walked through this all, right? So you've got license applications you're going to fill out. You've got your employer application. You've got your organization staff privilege, wherever you're going to go, hospital privileges. You've got provider enrollment contracts. And every time you look at this, you're really going to be looking at another application that you're going to have to complete. And a lot of times it's going to ask you for the same information over and over again. The hard part of this is that we're all accredited by various agencies, and these agencies really hold us to something called primary source verification. And that means that I need to go to the primary source, so to your peer reference directly, for example, and obtain an evaluation that says, yes, you are competent and qualified to do these things you want to do. We can't have a middleman. And because we need that, we need to know that you're giving us that information directly. So we know that there is a lot of repetitiveness in the applications that you're completing, and we all feel terrible about it. But just so that you know, there's nothing that we can do about it. So if you just set your mind like, yep, this is going to be a thing, I'm going to have to kind of just fill out this same information over and over again, that will really help you. When you first get started, the very first thing you're going to need is your national provider identifier. Now, you've probably already have one of these. If you don't already know about it, you've definitely got one. If you did not have to apply for this yourself, somebody at your residency program probably applied for this for you. I do this for my residents. We have a family medicine program at the health center, and so we do this for our residents. And basically, this NPI follows you throughout your professional career. I associate this as like your social security number, you know, for your professional history. But when you graduate, it's really important for you to kind of take back this information because it does follow you throughout your career. And CMS takes this so seriously that they actually put a requirement on the NPI that your password would expire every 60 days. And it's a little bit of a pain in the neck. And I know that sounds like it could be challenging, but every 60 days, you're not going to be getting into this application so often that you're going to need to keep, you know, remembering a new password. But I wanted to take a second to show you, because I think that when you graduate, you don't necessarily know even what this is about. So, oops, I'm sorry, I thought I was making that bigger. And I hit something wrong. So your NPI, this is the NPPES website. This left side, you can see there's two sides to the screen here. This left side is the NPI information where you can go in and actually make changes to your business, your licensure information. This right side, you're going to see it stands out create a new account, but down here it also says create or manage an account. If your license, or I'm sorry, when your password expires, this is actually the place that you need to go. And it can be quite, I think the website is a little bit confusing, and I think clinicians often don't know where to go to change this information. And this is no longer something that I can do for you. So I used to manage this for all of my clinicians, but because they have set up a dual, a multi-authentication process, this is something that, and I work with my clinicians to do this. Where you're going may or may not work with you to help you through this process. I do help my clinicians through this, but this is where you would actually go to manage your account. I just have the tabs already pulled up here so you could quickly see. When you click that tab, it takes you to a new website, which is right here. And you can see that you can sign in, and here's your password. If you forgot a password, you can retrieve that here. There you can, if you did forget your password, it's going to bring you to another screen where you could potentially answer questions that would help you kind of, I call it, break into the system. The other thing I wanted to point out to you on this NPPS registry that I think is really important, I'm just going to move our faces down right here. See this, how it says search NPI registry right here? I pulled up this tab right here because I want you to just see real quickly, this is a public record. So when you come to this search the NPI registry, you can put in your NPI number, or I could even just put in your first and last name and do a search here. And when I do that, this is what pulls up. So here's a clinician's name. You can see the NPI number. You can see information such as the mailing address and the primary practice address. You want to be really careful here because I can't tell you how many times people will add this mailing address and they'll put their home address here. And this is public information, and you've now put your home address out there so anybody could potentially see that. So I really want to draw your attention to that so you make sure not to do that. You can also see information such as your taxonomy code. And why is that important? Because when you go to your new employer, you're going to want to make sure that you're updating this information. So you can see here that she's worked in Texas, and that was her primary taxonomy code, but now that she's in Massachusetts, you can see that that's where she is now. This is going to be important because pharmacies, insurance companies are going to go verify this information, and if her primary taxonomy code was not in the state of Massachusetts, they're not going to pay claims. So this is really an important piece for you to take back once you graduate residency, and make sure you're keeping this updated. The other pieces of this is, like in my case, I create this account for my residents, and so I am the contact person on their accounts because I manage that for them through their residency program. But when they graduate, I kind of give all of this information back to them, and I say, okay, now I want you to go in and make sure you're changing these elements, and one of them is that contact, to make sure that you are back as that contact and you're maintaining that that information.
Karen, there was a question regarding the MPI from Christine, stating that currently their MPI is in a different classification because they haven't yet taken step 3. So when do you recommend changing the classification of the MPI?
I actually don't recommend you change any information on here until you graduate. Unless you're going to be doing that moonlighting. As you stated earlier, our residents don't moonlight, so that's not an issue for us. Unless you've got a full license in a state, I would not recommend. There's not really a need to update this because you would not be billing on your own, right? As a resident, you're billing under your preceptor, so it's not a requirement at that point.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
That's all for now.
The only other point that I want to really make with this is that that INA system that I pointed out, where you are going to change that password, I told you every 60 days. That also leads into credentialing, insurance credentialing piece. And you can see that I put down here PACOS. PACOS is Medicare's system to be able to credential you. And they will use your NPI to do that linking. And so GLFHC, I would send a request to you, the provider, and say, I want to be your surrogate. And that is where you would go in and approve that surrogacy, which allows me then to be able to bill for the services you provide to our patients. A lot of people are not really familiar with this INA system, how to get there, that it's connected to the NPI, and how to approve it. So I feel like this was an important piece that I just wanted to share with you so that you know when you graduate, the NPI isn't just for you and being able to bill or, for the pharmacies to look at, but also for the credentialing, excuse me, piece for Medicare. Okay, so next we want to talk about where you're going to work. And you might not know, you're ending your last year of residency, who you want to work for specifically. Maybe you do, but at the very least, you might know what state you want to work in. And that is really important because states vary in what their requirements and timelines are for processing applications. So it's really, really important to kind of get a feel for what the expectation is in the states that you're thinking about applying to. For example, in the state of Massachusetts, before you can even apply for a mass license, you have to complete the FCVS application process. So the FCVS is the Federation Credentials Verification Service. And what they do is they establish a permanent lifetime portfolio of your verified credentials. So here we go, one more application. You're going to fill it out. You're going to send it in to them, and they're going to verify your education, your residency, any licenses that you may have had, because it is possible that if you're residency and you do it in a way elective in another state, that you had to apply for a full license in that state. And so now you've got this full license that you've got to put on this application. So they'll verify all of those things for you. And then that happens for a lifetime. So once you've done this process, it doesn't go away, and you can actually utilize this service anytime you want to. It takes them about 45 days to complete this process. And it is required in 7 states before you can apply for the state mass license, or I'm sorry, the state license. You also have to get this FCVS application completed first. The cost is about $375, plus. I put the plus there because there are additional fees that they do charge for small incidentals. Like, for instance, if you are applying in the state of Massachusetts, they may charge you an extra $20 to then take this application and send the outcome to the state of Massachusetts. So now the state of Massachusetts can begin their part. And so that is true ongoing. Say you move from Massachusetts to Florida, you can now have FCVS send the credentials that they've already verified, because they're a CVS, which means that they are primary source verification. They can send it to any state, and that state will now have kind of a jump on your credentialing process. So I told you that you needed to apply for the FCVS before you could apply for a state license in Massachusetts, which is absolutely true. And I figured I would just go through, because I'm really familiar with the state of Massachusetts, some of the struggles that we have here. Fun fact, Massachusetts is the #1 most difficult state to get a license in. We have the highest rejection rates for verification items in the entire country. And because of that, we have this timeline of 3 to 6 months. And oftentimes when we start our application process, everybody wants it done like quicker, sooner, faster, right? And we always think we're going to be the ones that it's only going to take 3 months. But I cannot tell you how many times it usually happens. We hire probably about 20 to 25 people a year. And every time I think I get 2 to 3 people where it can take 6 months. We never know who it's going to happen to or why it's going to happen, but this is something that you really want to be aware of, is what the timeline is for the state that you're going to. You want to know that April to August is going to be the busiest season. And obviously that's because everybody's graduating from residency. They all need a license. And so there are going to be delays. So thinking about that being the busiest timeline and put that into perspective of your timeline is going to be really important. Massachusetts has something called a 90-day birthday renewal. And I really don't know if this is true in other states, but I figured if I go through this with you and you hear about it in another state, you'll at least be somewhat familiar with it. So the way this works is that if your birthday falls on, say, September 2023, and you apply for a license, and your license is issued on January 1st, 2023, their rule is that your renewal date will fall on January 1st, 2023. Okay? I'm sorry. Did I say January? Let me start again. Your birthday's on September 1st. Your license is issued on July 1st, 2023. Your renewal will not be until September 2024 because it's in that 90-day window. You follow? So your birthday's on September 21st, 2023. Your birthday, your license is issued in July, so just 2 months before, it won't be due for another whole year because it's in that 90-day window. But if your birthday falls on September 23 and your license is issued in January, then you're going to have to renew it that September because 9 months are going to go by. It's going to be within your next birthday month. This can be really confusing. So I want to make sure everybody understood that what I just said. You have, if your birthday, if they grant you a license outside that 90-day window, you're going to have to renew it on your next birthday. So you get your license in January, but your birthday's in September. You're going to have to get another license in September, and then it will be good for 2 more years. Okay. Now you might think, why would I do that? Why wouldn't I just wait until June and then until I fall in that 90-day period and just have to pay one time for that license? Why would I ever want to do that? We're going to hold that thought until I get to the credentialing process because I'm going to readdress that then. Okay, this 90-day birthday renewal is really important in the state of Massachusetts and how our credentialing process works. The next thing that we want to really pay attention to is following up on your application. Mistakes happen, information is not received. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong with this application. You could have missed something on that application, and the person who's reviewing it might totally just put it aside and be like, oh, I'll reach out to them later, and then they forget. We've seen crazy things like that happen here in Massachusetts. So we really want to make sure that you advocate for your license and you're following up with them. And the final thing I'll say about this is to save a copy of your application. We require this in the credentialing process, and we're going to ask you for it repeatedly. We need it for our credentialing, hospital credentialing, insurance credentialing. So make sure you save a copy of this application. Now, remember how I just told you right in the beginning that this is an evolving process, and what's true today is not going to be true 6 months from now. I have a case in point that just came up. The state of Massachusetts has just introduced a new online application. They have always done a paper application, and which was, very challenging to get through, but you could fill it in only part way, send it in, and then they may or may not have gotten it, and there could be lots of complications. Now they've got an online process. I've got a lot of hope that this will really help streamline their process, and that we can send those kind of supplemental things to them separately, but let's see what happens. So credentialing and privileging, always evolving, always changing. State of Massachusetts is now have that online process. Hopefully that's going to be good news for us, and they will start making that a little bit easier. Okay. The next thing I have for you is who will your employer be? What will you need to do once you decide who your employer will be? You're gonna want to talk, you're gonna want to update your CV. And I am passionate about CVs because I look at hundreds of them every year. And in fact, if you don't mind, I'm going to just share my screen one more time because I have a sample CV that I would like to share with you. This is kind of the order I personally really enjoy looking at a CV because it's clear, it's concise, and it meets all of the insurance requirements. So here we just have really clearly, who the CV is, what the address is, phone number, email address. The education is here. We want the most current on top. We want it to be in month-year format. Really important to have this month-year format. We want to make sure we have our work experience here, and you're going to want to make sure that you have your future employer listed on this CV. The reason that's important is because these CVs go out to the insurance companies, and the insurance companies are doing the same thing I'm doing. They're dissecting the CV and they're looking at it to, for red flags. We look for red flags, we look for holes. And speaking of holes, anything, by the way, that has more than a 2-month gap is going to need to be addressed on the CV. So why would you have a 2-month gap? Well, maybe you took a break between residency and when you started your first job. Oftentimes, our residents, they're ready to take a good vacation and they don't start until September or October. But that can be an issue on this resume. And so we literally would put gap in here and we would put, time off before starting job. It does not have to be descriptive. It does not have to have a lot of information, but the insurance companies will see that as a red flag and will want to know why, you have been out for that amount of time. No nefarious activities, you know what I mean? So here we go. This is just a basic. You do not have to have all of this information, but I thought this was a really good way to just kind of succinctly add each area that was important to the CV that we would need to know. You do not need to put any personal information on here. We used to have people, put their kids' names on here and their hobbies and birthdays. You do not need that. I keep it simple, keep it short. And hopefully that helps you. And if anybody's interested, I'm happy to share that with you as well. Just let me know.
Yes, someone did ask about a copy of that sample CV, so you can email it to me. I can put it in our Google Drive.
Okay,
Thanks.
sure. So next we're going to talk about privileges. Are you going to be working in a hospital? You're going to be taking call, rounding. Here at the health center, we apply for privileges for all of our part-time, full-time employees, even if they're only going to be affiliate status, so that they can go over and see their patients if they want to, be part of that medical staff. So that's just something to keep in the back of your mind. Again, that awesome paperwork that you're thinking about. And we're going to go over timelines about when you should apply for hospital privileges. Remember, it's great if you can advocate and you can be on top of this. Not every employer is as good at forecasting these timelines to keep you on track, because obviously you're going to want to make sure that your privileges are in place by the time you start your employment. That's going to be really important. Finally, I'm just going to talk about employer privileges. So if you come to the Greater Lawrence Family Health Center, I am going to hand you a delineation of privileges, and I'm going to say, in fact, right here, next screen, I'm going to show you a copy of what, sorry, let me just go, oops, sorry, I jumped ahead. Here we go. What my delineation of privileges look like. I hope you can see it because I blew it up as much as I possibly could, but privileges are really important because I know we don't like to document, but I want you to put on your credentialing hat, okay? So like from my perspective, I need to make sure that you're qualified and competent to do the things that you want to do, right? My job is I'm the gateway to patient safety. I need to make sure you are who you say you are, you're competent and you're qualified. How do I do that? And how do I prove to the Joint Commission, to NCQA, any of our accrediting bodies, that you are capable to perform these procedures on our patients? Well, one really important way is through your procedure log. So documenting procedures is really critical. I can't tell you how many of our own residents have come to me and said, I can do IUDs. I've done a bajillion of them. And I'm like, but you only have 2 logged. By the way, side note, for corporate, I'm pointing to my screen like you can see me, sorry. For core privileges here, right on the top section, I'm looking for a minimum number of 5. I want to see that you completed 5, you've got 5 documented procedures on your log. But don't just stop at 5. The more you have, we're like, oh man, she's got that one down. And I don't even have to think about it. I don't have to worry about it. You get to these advanced procedures. I could be looking for more. Colposcopy is not on here, but like colpos, if you were going to go into our colpo clinic, it's closed right now, so we're not taking anybody else in there. But I'm looking for more like 50 procedures versus like MVAs. I'm looking for more like 100. So it's really important that if there's a procedure you want to do, make sure you're logging it and do it ahead of time. Last year, I literally had 2 residents going through their old logs and trying to find patients so that they could go in and add them to their procedure log before they graduated from residency. So if you're ahead of the game on this now, it's only going to help you. Okay, so now we're going to get into licenses and other certifications. 24 states require an additional CSR, which is a controlled substance registration. So before you can get your federal DEA, you have got to get this. And so in Massachusetts, we call it an MCSR, Mass Controlled Substance Registration. So know the state that you're going to. If you're not sure, I do have a list I can send you of the 24 states that require it, or you could Google it. This, by the way, I did not go over costs with you. So let me just back up real quick because I only went through like the mass license. I did tell you FCVS was about $375. Mass license is $600. In the state of Massachusetts, your CSR is going to cost you about $150. And then your federal DEA. So your federal DEA is going to cost you $888 right now. After your federal DEA, another certification you're going to need, of course, is your board. I think most everybody is taking this in their last year of residency. But when you're filling out applications, say for your license, and you don't have your board yet, and it's going to ask you, are you board certified? Are you board eligible? Yes, you are board eligible. And even if you took that test, or even if you may know you've passed, well, you probably won't. Hopefully, you're going to apply for your license. Hopefully this is going to inspire you to apply early for your license. So you will mark that you're board eligible. But I do want to make sure that you have this known. We won't be able to verify your board certification until you graduate residency and you log into the ABFM website. Well, for us, for family medicine, it's ABFM. And you upload your license number. Once you do this, then we're able to see, oh yeah, you're board certified, and I can have that document in my file for accreditation purposes. Excuse me. Other certifications that you're going to, want to think about making sure that you're updating or see if you need it for your privileges is the BCLS, ACLS, also NALS, PALS, anything else. For Greater Lawrence Family Health Center, we require that anyone who touches a patient has BLS certification, and it's going to be current. So you cannot step foot. I cannot credential you. I can't process your application until I have a current certification on file. And finally, the last thing I just want to add is that all of these licenses, they're considered expirables. They need to be renewed. And so you need to make sure that you are really on top of all of these licenses, managing them, managing when they expire. A lot of them will expire on or around your birthday. Not only that, your hospital privileges, your, like for us, our health center privileges, or wherever you're employed, you're going to have privileges that are going to expire. So what's your process for tracking all of these? Now, at the health center, part of my role is basically to stalk you, and I will remind you incessantly that, you know, your license is going to expire, and I start 60 days out. And then I go to 45 days. And if I don't hear you, you're going to see my face or get some emails. Hopefully, wherever you go, they're going to do something like that too, to kind of help remind you, because it is a lot and there are a lot. But being, you know, I can tell you that I love my clinicians at the health center. They are awesome and amazing. And one of the reasons is because they respond to me. They recognize that, like, you know, I can't do my job unless they do their job, which is renewing that license. And even if they just respond to me and say, hey, Karen, you know what, I renewed it, it's on its way, like that just makes my life so much easier. So if, you know, I talked at the beginning that the foundation is really communication. If you can have a really good communication process with your credentialing staff, it really makes our lives easier. Even just knowing like, yep, I did it, thumbs up, we're good to go. The final thing that I just want to say about this is that all those fees I just talked about are usually reimbursed. And I say usually because I have found, sadly, there are a couple of places that don't reimburse. And they know that, you know, our clinicians know that going into that employment. But I want you to know and just have that on, so you can have those conversations, you know, as you're negotiating employment, that you're talking about reimbursement for all of these fees. For us, our auditors require that we have all original receipts, applications, and licensure. So like if we're going to send in a reimbursement for, say, a Massachusetts license, we want a copy of the application. We want a copy of the, you know, the check. It used to be a check front and back, had to be like copied, and then a copy of the actual Mass license to prove that it was received. So just keep that in mind. I felt like wanted you to have that information. Oops, I'm jumping ahead again. Insurance credentialing. So I mentioned this back in the beginning that you're going to have this insurance credentialing piece. I do wear two hats. I credential both for the institution, but also for the health plans. My goal is that when you start with the health center, on your first day, you are at a minimum 70% credentialed with all of the insurance plans, because otherwise we cannot bill for your services and we're just going to lose that money. And we don't want to do that, right? Because we're a CHC. We need to make some money here. So I work really hard to meet all of those deadlines. You may hear about CAQH. CAQH stands for the Council for Affordable Quality Healthcare. And they're basically a repository to hold all of this information. Remember we were talking about like all of those forms you have to fill out over and over again? Here's one more place where you have to fill out this form. Now, at the health center, we do this for you. We do not require you to do this. I told you that I'm a big advocate for my clinicians, and I really, really try to help them as much as possible because it is a painful process. But not everybody is going to do that for you. So I wanted to make you aware of this in case your organization said, you know, hey, by the way, we need you to go to this website and fill it all out. It's not really challenging. It will take time, and it's one more place where you're entering all that same information. And basically, this is a place where not only we enter that information, but you've got to upload all of your licenses into it, your malpractice COI. There may be like your BLS, there may be other things that you need to upload in there, and it has to stay current. Not only does it have to stay current, but you have to attest every 120 days that the information is accurate. So again, for our clinicians, I do this for them. I manage their accounts. I make sure that every time a license expires, I'm putting it into the CAQH account for them. And then I attest. And those expirables, boy, they're a pain in my neck because there's so many of them. You're starting to manage like 140 applicants. It is quite a process. And there is a big push right now to make sure the insurance companies have to make sure that all of the practice information is updated and current. So there's a lot of pressure on them to make sure that all of that information is complete. Again, I do that for my clinicians, but you may want to be engaged in that process as well. The other piece for insurance credentialing is Medicare, Medicaid. We spoke briefly about that INA system and improving your employer as a surrogate. So just want to put that plug in one more time. And keeping up that MPI, don't forget to update that information. And then other health plans may require your signature to like join a contract with the health center. So Blue Cross Blue Shield may have you have to sign this contract that says that you're going to allow the Greater Lawrence Family Health Center to bill for your services. So just be aware that there may be other documents that you have to sign so that we can connect you and get you credentialed to those insurance plans. And just having really good communication and response time on that is super helpful for me. Those health plans take on average 8 to 12 weeks to process. So the sooner I can get you engaged, get that signature, and I can get it to them, the more time that they have to process those applications. So now I have kind of what I call a fun activity to just really let you know in this whole process what to expect as far as credentialing and what that timeline is going to look like. Okay, and I want to start at the end and work my way back so that you can see each step of the way what it's going to take to be able to complete this process. So I've got my Dr. Who here, and I've looked ahead, and we want to hire him to start on September 5th, 2023. So September, that's a good long ways away, right? And we're thinking we've got lots of time. We shouldn't have to worry about that application. But I just told you that it takes about 8 to 12 weeks to get insurance credentialing complete. And so I know, I wish I had a pointer because I keep pointing to my screen, but I want you to look to the far right of my screen where it says CAQH, and you see that 7/17/2023 date. Okay, so what I did was I am going to assume best case scenario, right? Because we want everybody in, and we're going to be the ones that are not going to take too long. So we're going to say 8 weeks, we can get this done. And we're going to have 70% of our insurance credentialing done, completed. So when you start, you're going to be able to start seeing patients on 9/5. So 7/17 is when I have got to have all of the information uploaded, attested to, and approved in CAQH. I cannot beat that date. Now, that requires me having a complete application and hospital privileges. And I know that the hospital always meets on the second Tuesday of the month, right? And so the second Tuesday of the month, and of course, I wish I had a calendar here. Hold on. Here we go. Sorry about that. Thanks for waiting for me. So the second Tuesday of the month is going to be July 11th. So I know that if I'm going to meet a July 11th date, now remember, July is 4th of July week, lots of vacation, lots of issues. So we're cutting it close, but we're still going to assume best case scenario. That means by July 3rd, those signatures are going to start going out to the department heads. So we need a complete application at the hospital ready to be signed by the department heads by no later than July 3rd. So that means I need to make sure that I've got a federal DEA in by June 26th, because I need a week, right? I need to give the medical staff office. And again, this is built on a relationship that we have with Lawrence General Hospital. They work really closely with us. And this is like, I can't tell you how many times I have actually followed this process to a T, because we cut it that close. But that means by June 26th, I need to give them a whole week to wrap that file up, to make sure that they've gone through, they've done the auditing process. They know that they've got everything. I've got to make sure that DEA, because that's usually the last piece of it, is in no later than June 26th. But it takes 2 weeks at minimum to get that federal DEA. So I know that the federal DEA, I've got to apply for it by June 12th, right? I have to apply for that federal DEA by June 12th. Well, that means I need to have that MCSR by June 12th so that I can apply for that federal DEA. And I know that if I'm going to apply for that MCSR, it takes 2 weeks for me to get that MCSR. And this is best case scenario. Now, if I back it up 2 weeks, I'm in Memorial Day, and we're still around the holidays and people are taking vacation, but we're going to assume best case scenario. And so we're going to say, okay, maybe Friday, but maybe by Friday, May 26th, if I get that MCSR in 2 weeks, I'm going to be good. So what does that mean? That means I got to make sure I have my license, because I can't apply for my MCSR until I have my mass license. So when do I have to have my mass license in my hand? Well, I know that the Board of Registration of Medicine only meets on the first and third Thursdays in May, right? And that's only because we're getting into our busy season and they start having multiple meetings. But I know that typically, historically, they always meet. So I have got to have that. I've got to have that license. And I've got to make sure that my license is on that committee by 5/18. Now, just because if I get approved by 5/18, I'll get notified, yes, but I won't get my number probably until 5/22. So I'm still good. I still got like some time to get that MCSR done and out. But I've got to have a license approval by 5/18. Now, if you remember back earlier in the presentation, I told you that it takes between 3 to 6 months to get a Massachusetts license. But we're going to assume best case scenario, and we're going to be that application that goes through in only 3 months. It's not going to take any longer. So if I back up 3 months, that means I have got to have a complete application submitted to the board and ready to have them review by February 23rd. Got to have that application in, it's got to be complete. So when I say complete, I mean, we're not waiting for the program director to send in an evaluation. We're not waiting for the National Practitioner Data Bank to send their file over. We're not waiting for a peer reference to come in and that it's signed on the envelope. We've got everything in, it's done, it's ready to go. But we know, so we know that February 23rd is our drop dead deadline. That means FCVS has got to be done by February 23rd, because we know that Mass will not start their process until 2 things happen. They have a complete application from FCVS and they have a complete application from you. So in order for FCVS to have that completed by February 23rd, remember we said they need about 6 weeks, 45 days to be able to do their application process. That means that you need to send in a complete application, not a partial application, to FCVS by January 12th. Now, I just want you to see, in order to start in September, when do you need to be thinking about applying for that license? It is super, super critical for you to have this in the back of your mind for realistic timelines. We have literally pushed out people's start date based on delays in credentialing, because it's really hard to justify starting a provider seeing patients, and we cannot bill for their services for 3, 6, 9 months. We don't know how long it's going to take. So starting this process and having it in the back of your mind sooner rather than later is really critical. And remember, what are you doing in January, 9 months before you start? I mean, you're coming off, you're thinking you've got to have a completed application. That means you've got to fill all of these applications out. That means you need to take the time to log in, find out what they need, collect all that information, do the research into, all of the other places you're going to need to get certifications to meet that application requirement and get that done. Are you rounding? Are you on call? Are you on vacation? Are you on away elective? What's going on in your life that is going to be a barrier to completing those applications at that time? If all I do in this presentation is to really kind of get your mind set to what it is that you need to do so that you can be planning ahead and really prepared, then I've done my job. And so I will just leave you with this. All you need is motivation. False. All you need is fear and approaching deadline. I can't tell you how many of my clinicians operate on deadlines. It's funny, but it really, really works. So that's it. That's all I have for you today. That's my presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, first, thank you so much, Karen. I really appreciate that detailed kind of like timeline and explanation of everything and what it means. That's great. I'll open it up to people on if they have any additional questions. I'll give you good times to think. One thing I will also add is the importance of like checking yourself. So for me, I don't remember you remember this, Karen, but I didn't realize I had my license until like May, and they had actually given it to me in March. But the only reason why I knew in May was because they like messaged me about renewal because my birthday was in June. So I was one of those people where I got my initial license but had to do a renewal at my birthday. And so I was like, wait, why are you asking me to do a renewal? Did I actually get my license? Like I hadn't received anything about like nice license notification. But I did get the information about the renewal. So I was like, oh, they just want more of my money. So be sure to also like double check on your own and not always waiting for that communication as well.
Mm-hmm. I noticed that someone put in the chat about the X waiver, and you just want to put a little note out there about the X waiver as far as the credentialing office goes, because when you have your X waiver, I always request a copy of, I call it the notification of intent, but it's that waiver basically saying that, you have been approved. It's that data waiver letter. Sometimes it comes in email, sometimes it comes in snail mail, but I always ask for a copy of it, and I do it for two reasons. One, it's a brand new requirement that we have to prove that all of our clinicians do have an X waiver. So that's one. Two, community health centers can sometimes get reimbursed based on when you get that waiver. So that's important to know when you get that date. But really, the most important thing is that I'm going to say if and when you are audited by the feds, they will ask you for that waiver letter. And I have actually saved clinicians because they'll call me and say, I can't find it. I'm in clinic. I don't know where I put it. Do you have it? And I'm like, yeah, I got you. And I just email them a quick copy. And I save that for them. So I don't know if your credentialing department will do that for you, but just keep it in the back of your mind that you will need that for auditing purposes.
Alrighty, any other questions? Last call, we're approaching 8 o'clock. If there are none, I am going to share my screen just to inform you all of our next kind of session related to kind of like the job search process on November 13th, same time. We're going to be having a career panel that's kind of more so geared at like the job search, how to find a job that's related to you. You might recognize someone, Karen, here.
Yeah.
Lance Bray was my co-resident. And so each of the clinicians have different career paths. So kind of that exposure, but also kind of like what to ask for, what to look for in a job. So keep that on you all's calendars. You'll see some more of the publicity around that. But also, if you all may do a poll for today's session. So I'm going to launch that, and it just helps us to know how we can always improve. And if you all found the session helpful, I know it's been helpful for me, so I just wanted to share. But I don't know if it's too much based on like where you all are at in your residency careers. But again, this is recorded. It'll be within the website for you all to watch again. So you just have to log into the membership side of that. But I do want, so if you can do that poll, that would be great. But again, if last call for questions and then we can let Karen go. We really appreciate having you. And again, like the presentation was really great. I even learned like a few new tablets. I was like, oh, I didn't know that part. So always learning.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. You all have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
I'm like, how did everybody answer this survey so quick?
I don't think they
Sorry, I'm
did.
almost.
Priscilla had to go out. I think you're the only one that's actually responding. I don't think Leanne did. It's fine. But I think Leanne was on her phone. I don't know how it appears. I think it appears normal, right, on the phone, I presume. But yeah, I hope you found it helpful.
I did. It's a lot, but I'm having, as I talked to my therapist, like, what am I doing? Am I staying in North Carolina or not? And like, am I doing academics right away, or am I just going to get a job and get experience and then maybe return? And yeah, but I'm also like, this is a problem for January because our program does like our intern year, they do a family medicine month where they pull all the interns off of rotations and they're all together, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then in second year, because they can't do that because we're workhorses, they split our class in half. So my month is January. And so they talk about like licensing, contracts, like patient panel management, more like you have to be thinking about post-residency.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like, that is when I need to like get my life together.
Yeah. And I mean, like, if you know there are other like states that you're thinking about, like I applied to Mass and Florida because I thought I was really gonna go back to Florida, but then I was like, maybe I can still do per diem
You're
or
a brave soul.
telehealth.
I refuse to go back to Florida.
I know. It's like I struggle. That's why I ended up staying because I was like, oh, I don't know what that first, few years of attending life gonna be like in a state like Florida. But even if I went to Florida, I could have still did telehealth in Massachusetts. So it's like, well, either way, I could potentially use both. So when I did the FCBS, which is that just kind of like, national credentialing, I just did both at the same time. So I didn't have to like, make a complete decision.
Yeah.
So you have that option too. You don't have to, bug down. But again, like even though I kind of started like and I like submitted that in September, but I didn't really make a final decision until January. So I didn't do the state licensing until that time. So
Got it.
so yeah, don't feel like you have to know everything right now.
I
But
just think
yeah,
it's just like when I tell my mom eventually, she's gonna be like, there's more hoops. Like I just feel like it never like when does it really stop? Like it's just
it
so
doesn't.
and I just like I don't love inefficiency. And this to me seemed like how many more places do you want our information? Like literally you should have my entire life, including how much I own in student loans. Like I just don't understand why this is so hard.
Yep.
But I have a database issue, which is a whole thing. But anyway, I'm gonna let you go.
Alrighty, take care.
Good luck on your boards in
Thank
about a
you,
week.
thank you.
You're
And happy
welcome.
early holidays to you as well.
Thanks. Same to you.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye.